Thanks. Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Carlson. I'm Executive Director of Illinois People's Action, also known as IPA. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight on this first emergency grassroots community meeting on the COVID-19 crisis. Our purpose in holding this meeting is to activate grassroots and faith leaders, as well as everyday people, to be able to work together in protecting the health, security, and finances of our vulnerable residents, families, and community. This meeting is not a recap of what is or isn't happening at the federal or state level. What we're focusing on are the immediate issues our municipalities and county officials, of whom there are 38 across Bloomington, Normal, and McLean County, should be addressing right now, with the nearly $1.5 billion in taxpayer budgets at their disposal. Our challenge in the face of this crisis is to make what seems to be politically impossible today, politically inevitable tomorrow. Our speakers tonight are grassroots and faith leaders, including Rachel Shively and Cecilia Long of Bloomington Normal DSA, Monsignor Reverend Doug Hennessy from IPA, Olivia Butts from Black Lives Matter, Louis Goslin from One People's Campaign, and Tori Morey and Kelby Clemson of McLean County COVID-19 Mutual Aid Team. We know that we don't have all the answers, but we'll commit to you that we'll work together to do three things. One, we'll work to get this right. Two, we'll be credible. And three, we will promote action. So let's get started with the ground rules for tonight's meeting. I'm going to have to briefly read these because I believe that there are some who are on the telephone and don't have the benefit of the computer screen. But we will be in control of speakers who will be allowed to speak, although there is a chat format that you will see on your screen. The moderator will select the questions and will temporarily unmute you to speak. If you don't get your question or comment, there is a form that we have at the end of this that you will be able to ask your question and we'll do our best to answer. We'll be sharing various links throughout the meeting and in the chat window, so make sure to keep a lookout for those. And while several elected officials may be joining this call, we will not engage in violation of the Open Meetings Act. So now reviewing our agenda. There's 9 points to it for those of you on the telephone. We've already completed the welcome and introduction. We will then be moving soon to why we're here. Number 3 is what we must ask our leaders to take bold action on. Item 4 is what our demands are. Item 5, how will we make these happen? 6, a strategy for taking action. 7, how can we help each other? 8, questions and reactions, and then 9, closing. With that being said, I would now like to introduce Rachel Shively from Bloomington Normal DSA for why we're here. Rachel?
Great, thank you, Don. So I'm just going to briefly say a few things about what motivated us to be here tonight. So we're here because a lot of people in our community are really anxious and fearful about the short and long-term health and well-being of our community. We're here because we need an action plan locally to address the coronavirus crisis. We're here to ask that our local elected officials take immediate action to protect residents and to make a plan to keep everyone in our community healthy, fed, in their homes, and economically secure. Historically, the experience of the 1918 flu epidemic, for example, shows that a municipal plan to protect residents can make the difference between life and death for thousands of people. And while grassroots and nonprofit organizations are important and should be key partners in this effort, they can't take the place of government in terms of the resources and power to act. And we as residents pay taxes and need our local government to take a proactive leadership role and use taxpayer dollars for the good of the community. So we ask that our local governments follow in the footsteps of other communities across the country that are being proactive and taking measures to make sure that their communities have what they need to weather this crisis. And the well-being of everyone in our community really relies on everyone having housing, access to healthcare, and economic and food security. And waiting to act until the coronavirus takes an even greater hold will be too late. So the purpose and outcomes of the meeting, the goal is to talk about the measures that we will ask local governments to implement. Another purpose is to ask our local officials to step up and take leadership on this issue. And then lastly, to invite all of you to join us in taking actions to demand that our local governments be proactive on a plan to protect our community from the effects of COVID-19. Now we're going to hear from Reverend Hennessy about why we must take bold action on this issue. Thanks.
You know, some years ago, Robert Both's play, A Man for All Seasons, where there's a dialogue between Thomas More and his daughter. She's trying to persuade him to avoid the gallows. She says, in reason, haven't you done as much as God could reasonably want? More answers, well, finally, it isn't a matter of reason. It's a matter of love. And what we're about tonight is truly a matter of love. Do well, I think, to think about how we're going to respond to this virus and to concern about businesses who are compromised by not being able to function as they normally do. But perhaps it's even more important that we make sure that people who are usually forgotten are not forgotten as we plan and prepare to deal with this virus. People like those, as Rachel mentioned, who are financially precarious, the homeless, the frail elderly, all those people that need special protection and care. Now, I think the people of the county board that I know and the councils are really good people. So we simply ask them to do what is right, to work together and to create a program and a plan that will make sure that these people who are often forgotten are not forgotten as we deal with this coronavirus. That's really critically important, I think. The Gospel of Matthew 25, Jesus talks about the Last Judgment. He doesn't ask what our business plans were, our profit and loss sheet, what our business. He says simply, how did you take care of the least of my sisters and brothers? We want to make sure that that happens as we deal with this coronavirus. Making sure this happens is truly a matter of love.
Amen.
So let me go on now, and I think our next speaker is talk about some of the demands that we have. I think that's Joel, Cecilia, and Olivia.
Hi everyone, my name's Cecilia Long. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm with Bloomington Normal's Democratic Socialists of America. As we present our demands tonight, I'd like people to keep in mind that we are not suggesting that we have all the answers. There are many great people working hard to adapt and respond to this crisis as it unfolds. We know that people in our community, especially our most vulnerable populations who are already struggling, will feel the effects of this crisis first. The well-being of our community relies on everyone having housing, access to healthcare, and economic and food security. As mentioned earlier, we have 38 elected officials between the City of Bloomington, the Town of Normal, and the McLean County Board, in addition to hundreds of hardworking professional staff that oversee collective budgets of $468 million. To our knowledge, there are no joint emergency plans to deal with this crisis at this time. We are asking that our local elected officials come together to coordinate an intergovernmental plan that matches the urgency of this issue, and that this process involves everyday people. We need them to use their governing power, our taxpayer money, and their access to resources to ensure that nobody in our community falls through the cracks of this crisis, and especially those of our vulnerable community members. Olivia will now speak to our first demand.
Hi all, my name's Olivia Butts, and I'm with Black Lives Matter Bloomington Normal. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Our first ask ultimately is to designate money. We want each of our local units of government to designate a substantial amount of money to be used collectively to address the community's health and economic needs during this crisis. We need a coordinated plan between all three sectors of government, and that means McLean County, City of Bloomington, and Town of Normal. Our residents shouldn't have to go to 3 different websites or read a variety of different news stories to understand what their government is doing for them and what's available for them during this crisis. There should be one plan that can be shared widely across all platforms, websites, and social sites. This money can and should be used for rent and mortgage assistance, childcare subsidies, utility payments, and emergency assistance for small businesses. Joel's going to speak a little bit about our next demand.
Thank you, Olivia. My name is Joel Studebaker. I'm a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, Bloomington Normal. My pronouns are he, him, his. Today, I'd like to talk about our second demand, which is that we want each of our local units of government to leverage their power to advance policies, practices, and decisions that protect residents, with our most vulnerable at the center. We have a number of items that fall in this category, but I'd like to start today by talking about something that's at the center, and that's paid sick leave. For many of us, we might be able to work from home during this crisis, and we might have access to large banks of sick leaves that we can use if we or a family member that we need to care for fall ill. However, not everybody has that, which is why each of our units of government needs to immediately extend paid sick leave to all of their employees, including part-time employees, contracted workers, and vendors. Even though some of these individuals may not be able to report and fulfill the duties they're typically paid for, we need to acknowledge the contract we have with those individuals and ensure that they're taken care of until they're able to return to work. Second, we need to pass legislation that requires enterprises and businesses to provide this sick leave to their workers. To the extent that this isn't legally possible within our own jurisdictions, we need to pass a resolution urging state and federal lawmakers to pass those resolutions themselves. And we need to simultaneously take whatever measures we can to incentivize businesses to offer paid sick leave and reward those businesses who do. Additionally, our next demand under this category is to expand township assistance. For many residents in our community who fall through the cracks, they have nobody to turn to except for our township, who provides general and emergency assistance. We need to expand that general and emergency assistance in the Bloomington Township, following the model that's already been set up by Normal Township and their expansion of this program a couple of years ago. Additionally, Township is only legally allowed to serve people who do not already receive meager TAMF and other benefits. That's temporary assistance to needy families. So we need to work with state and federal lawmakers to waive current restrictions, allowing our townships to provide assistance to all families, regardless of what benefits they may already be receiving.
In addition to that, we need to talk about how people's housing and utilities, with being unable to pay for their bills, will be affected by this crisis. So many people have already lost their jobs and are panicking to figure out how they're going to be able to pay their rent and their bills. We need to make sure that no one loses their home because of the coronavirus outbreak, which is why we demand that there be a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures. And we know this is possible. The sheriff in Champaign County released a statement 3 days ago saying that they would not evict anyone during this crisis. We think the McLean County Sheriff should make a commitment that homeowners and renters will not face eviction during this pandemic or in the immediate aftermath. We also need to prevent utility shutoffs as well as cell phone and internet services. And some have already done this voluntarily. I know the Town of Normal announced last week that they will not be shutting people's water off. We'd like officials to negotiate with utility companies to halt all utility shutoffs and waive late fees and call-ahead requirements. We also need to make sure that community members who are homeless or housing insecure are not forgotten about. They're one of the most vulnerable groups in our community due to the lack of a place to self-quarantine and a lack of access to basic necessities to ride out an illness and avoid infecting others. Sleeping arrangements in our shelter spaces are already close quarters. Think about how quickly this virus would spread with even just one person infected in a room full of people sleeping in a shelter. And what happens if we receive an order to shelter in place and some people don't have a place to shelter? What's the plan? We also have populations in our community that live in high density housing arrangements like Phoenix Towers and the Downtowner. They've had issues with not being able to get rid of bed bugs and have them traveling throughout several buildings. A virus could spread very quickly in these types of housing situations. We ask our local officials to work with local hotels and alternative housing options to use publicly owned vacant homes, libraries, recreation centers, and other properties to house anyone in need of shelter immediately.
Our next ask is that grocery stores are regulated. If you've been to a grocery store in the last week, you know that many are sold out of basic necessities like toilet paper and bread. You also may have seen lines as people wait for eggs, and which certainly doesn't allow for social distancing. There are many at-risk folks in our community who are more susceptible for illness because of their age or pre-existing conditions. Grocery stores should be required to hold special hours for high-risk shoppers. You may have noticed that some grocery stores, such as Hy-Vee, have already put these hours in place. I know that they've dedicated their first hour of opening from 7 to 8 a.m. for folks who are at higher risk of illness. We must not wait for businesses and corporations to make these decisions. These can and should be mandated by the local government now. Grocery stores and other businesses should be incentivized to eliminate fees for grocery or food delivery as well. Finally, a hotline should be created to report price gouging, and strong penalties should be imposed on businesses that are found in violation. Next, I want to talk a little bit about decarceration and inmate support. We are asking that the McLean County Sheriff not accept any new people to the jail unless they present an immediate threat, violent threat to others. Black Lives Matter Bloomington Normal has already published an open letter to the sheriff asking him to not only not accept any new people to the jail, but also that a couple other things. One, that solitary confinement is not used as a means to quarantine inmates. Two, that conference fees for jailed individuals during this no visitation period are waived. And three, we're asking that they release all pretrial detainees who are being held on a cash bond. If you don't know what a cash bond is, it means that someone is being held at the McLean County Jail just because they cannot afford their money bond. We are asking that anyone who has a money bond being held at the jail, or anyone who is a nonviolent high-risk inmate, so someone who might be over the age of 50 with a pre-existing condition or something like that, be released at this time. We know folks right now in the McLean County Jail who are being held on a bond, and we don't think that $100 or $200 or $2,000 is a reason to risk that person's health and life as a fellow community member. Joel's going to talk to us a little bit more about our next set of demands.
Our final set of demands is that we want each of the local units of government to direct their resources towards meeting the emerging needs of the community. Here's what we know, that today there are going to be substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, and plenty of other non-essential staff who are not reporting to work and cannot take care of their typical day-to-day responsibilities from home. Many of these people should be at home caring for children or other people who are in their care, and some should be at home sheltering because they are at high risk. But we are going to have needs as a community. That includes the collection, distribution, and delivery of food. And in the future, that might include additional support for medical services and testing operations. To that extent, we need to ensure that any person who is not able or not important to the day-to-day operations can be repurposed to one of these purposes. Additionally, we should extend this not only to government workers, but to any person who needs temporary employment because they are out of work, so long as they are able-bodied and not at high risk. Additionally, we should use our physical resources, in particular our facilities, for anything that is necessary. Again, we are going to need places for food distribution, for testing operations, and we may, if this gets very critical, need additional spaces where we can set up emergency ICU units. And finally, we want to challenge the local industry to do the same thing. We know that we do have a manufacturing sector locally, and there are national needs for respirators, ventilators, and all manner of other medical supplies, which currently we are not able to meet through our current supply chain. We need to encourage all of our local businesses to consider the ways that they may be able to support these emergent needs, even if it means temporarily setting aside their typical day-to-day activities. That is all of our demands. At this time, we would like to open up the floor for questions about the demands that we have raised. If you have a question, please put it in the chat.
So somebody's raising the question, how are demands being presented to local officials?
That's a really good question, Robert. At the moment, this is our first public showing of these demands. We're looking to distribute these in a democratic fashion, not in closed doors, which means that local officials were invited to this event to see these demands, and they'll have an opportunity to respond to these demands after this call. We'll have another opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the presentation tonight. But if you have questions, we'll take another minute. And if you'd like to put anything in chat now, you can do so.
So a follow-up question from Robert, how will they have an opportunity to respond? How are we gonna engage elected officials after this call?
Does somebody else on the panel want to take that one?
Well, I think I'll just say, knowing the agenda, that we're gonna get to that in our action steps. Somebody asking, is there any way that you can send me this list so I can share with folks who are asking these questions? And the answer is yes. So I have dropped the link to our full list of demands in the chat, and I'm dropping it now again. This is a Google document that you can share, and has a number of explanations for each of the demands. And there is also this pretty little graphic that you see, which we're going to be sharing on social media. Let's see, we've got another question. Halting all evictions during this time. I understand the courts are limiting cases right now. When the courts open back up, will there be parameters set in terms of who qualifies for this eviction halt? For example, those tenants who may be in default for reasons other than the coronavirus?
Olivia, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure exactly what will happen after the courts open back up. I think the thing to remember here is we are just, most of us, right, are just community organizers, and we're coming together to try to fill a gap that we in the local government. So we're not necessarily the ones who hold all the answers here and know exactly how all these policies should be dealt with. I think the thing here is it's time to apply a little bit of, to start asking the right questions of our elected officials, and for them to do the job that they were elected to do and that we pay them to do. And we're really hoping that presenting some of these demands and asking some of these questions allows them to create some policies that can be put in place to really help those vulnerable people that we're all here looking out for and talking about. So I'm not quite sure we will be able to get into like the nitty gritty of the policy or how things will happen, especially regarding this question from Janice about evictions and once the courts open back up. But I'm hoping that, you know, as we gather these questions, these are the type of questions we should continue to ask our elected officials, right? And remind them that this is the job that they were elected to do, even amidst a crisis like the coronavirus.
Great. We're going to have another portion of question and answer at the end. So if you typed in a question that we didn't get to, there is still going to be a chance for us to get to that. But we're going to move things along over to Louis and Don, who are going to tell us how we're going to make these demands real.
Yeah, so first I want to thank everyone who has been a part of organizing this, and to all the people who have joined this call. First off, my name is Louis Gosselin. I'm a resident of Bloomington. Pronouns are he, him, his. I'm also the executive secretary for One People's Campaign, a member organizer of Illinois People's Action, and executive officer with Bloomington Normal Democratic Socialists of America. And, I think that what we're facing is something that is incomparable to anything that we've seen before. I've been a member of this community for the past 5 years, and there's really no group of people and community that I'd rather be in to face something like this, because when I look at the people who are on this call, whether it be the panelists or the 100+ folks who have called in and have joined this, what I see are people whose names I recognize, who I've spent countless hours rising to the occasion of justice time and time again, to create openings and an invitation for more people to join us, to build a community like the one that has shown up on this call tonight, like the ones that have not been able to join us yet. And so for all of those who are on here tonight, who have come from different social justice causes, who have come from different political causes, who have come from different angles of servicing within our community, I thank you. And it's going to be your experience that we need to meet this crisis together. And for all of those who I don't recognize, for all of those who are joining this as the first moment that you're rising up to meet, I also thank you, that it's going to take the momentum and the building of a movement in order to get the things that we need to do, as what Father Hennessy said, to meet this moment with love and humanity, because that is the cause that we're facing right now. It's the cause of love, humanity, and a question of whether or not we are not only going to survive this, not whether or not the most vulnerable in our community are going to survive this, but whether or not we're actually going to come out of this stronger, with the kinds of community intact to support each other, not only in this unprecedented struggle, but for each of the struggles to come. And that invitation isn't limited to the grassroots leadership that it's going to take to win this fight. That invitation necessitates the participation of those who have the seats of power, who have ready to make the changes that we need to see in order to make sure that our community is able to survive and to keep their health intact, to keep their finances intact, to keep their families intact. We have to create the invitation and the insistence that our elected officials take action. And so it's encouraging to me that we have elected officials who are on this call, in this meeting, but it's going to take everyone, every single person taking action to make the kinds of changes that we need to see. And so with the great organizing talent and ability that has already gotten behind making this meeting happen, and is ready to make the strategy and the steps necessary to get the changes that we need, we have put together an action guide that is linked in the chat, and is also up on the slide deck. And so for those of you who are on the phone and can't see, I will go ahead and read through what these are. First, we need folks to get involved. That includes everyone who's on this call and all of those who are in your network of relationships, your friends, family, colleagues. It's not just about building the people power necessary to make this happen. It's also giving people the sense of hope and agency that there is something that can be done, that we don't have to sit by and hope that something happens. We can step up and get to work. So that starts with signing up and making sure that you are part of our communication network so that we can continue to update you on what's next, update you on what we're hearing from our elected officials, and what we can do to make sure not only that we're safe in our personal lives, but that we are able to get the things that we need in this time of crisis. The next piece is to put your name behind this movement. We've put together a petition. It's a way that we can not only show the democratic power that's behind this, it's also an opportunity for you to take a stand and put your name into the movement, to let folks that you know and that know you, that you're with us. Up next, we also have an opportunity to start to open this dialogue and create this invitation with each of our elected officials. It's going to take every single one of them. Already on this call, we've heard about actions that the city council can take. We've heard about things that are within the county board's jurisdiction, and we've heard about the need for the sheriff to get involved as well. And so in this action guide that's linked in the chat and that will be sent to everyone, there's a block of email addresses to make it as easy as copying and pasting that into your address bar, and to ensure that every single person who is responsible in their leadership to our community hears what we're talking about tonight and knows that people are watching, people are expecting their leadership, and that they are invited to join us in making this happen. Now, this is the first time that I've been a part of a mass community meeting in the digital realm. And so we are adapting and taking our power to the internet, as well as reaching out, through phone and every other means possible. But we need to make sure that everybody in our community understands what it is that we're talking about tonight, to understand that there are clear demands, that things that we can make happen in our community. And that starts with sharing, simply sharing an image. A lot of folks have already shared things on social media. We've created an image that you can share, an infographic that will help spread what we've talked about tonight through the digital sphere and invite people again to rise up to this occasion. The next piece is something that we'll be talking about next in the agenda, which is about mutual aid. Now, what that means, and we'll hear about it more, is recognizing that this isn't just a time of political need and a need for leadership. This is also a time of actual need where we've got folks who need things like running errands and things that we can do as a community to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And lastly, we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to stay in contact with the campaign. And that's why we've created an email address that you can reach out to us on. And we're also wanting to make this a regular conversation where we can continue to jump on as we have tonight and have weekly conversations, not only to update you on what's happening and what our elected officials are telling us and what we're hearing back, but also as a way that we can stay moving and creating momentum so we can bring more people into this conversation, and so that we can keep our strategy nimble and flexible as we face the challenges ahead. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to open up the action guide. Make sure that everyone that you know who's concerned, everyone who's feeling helpless, everyone who is scared in this moment, understand that there's power in this community, that we have risen up together, and that we are going to face this together. But it's going to take our elected officials being on board, and together we can make that happen. So that is what I've got. That is what we are here to do. And we, again, thank everyone for joining us in this moment of meeting this crisis with humanity and love by taking action and insisting that everyone join us, most especially those who have the power to make a change and do something.
Great. So this feels like a good time before we move into the mutual aid piece of things for us to take some more questions. So I'm going to do my best to unmute people, but it's hard to do with folks who are on the phone. So I will relay questions as best as I can. I see here a question. There was a question from Jackie Gunderson. So I am going to unmute Jackie. And Jackie, go ahead with your question.
So it was from earlier when we were talking about making sure that our elected officials are in the loop and are then sharing this information out and connecting with their networks. I watched the McLean County live feed earlier, and Camille Rodriguez mentioned that they are sharing things with our county board officials, then expecting them to either email or share through their social media. And I just have a few concerns about how we might connect with those folks when I have met many of them, and I'm concerned about their ability to navigate technology, which is what a lot of what we currently are using because we can't talk in person. So do you have ideas on better connect with those people that probably aren't going to see these infographics and don't know how to use Zoom, or are probably not checking their email like we all are? Are there ways that we can make sure we connect in a way without going and knocking on their door?
Yeah, if I can jump in on this one, I think that obviously there are new challenges that we have to address. What I do want to say is that for at least the McLean County Board, I believe every county board member has a phone number listed on the website. I'm not certain that that's the case of City of Bloomington and Town of Normal as well, but there are alternative means that we can use. And in part, this might also be incumbent on us to identify how can we best reach out to those county board members. Ideally, they'll be making themselves available to us. That should be our expectation, that they will find a way to allow us to get in touch with them and provide that feedback to them. That is their job, ultimately. But we can also use all of those means that are available to us, whether that's email, social media, or phone. And it looks like County Board also has addresses, so if you want to get those postcards out, now's the time.
The other thing that I'd like to say is that this is an initial step forward, that this action guide is a first step that we can all take together. However, there are things that the folks on this call, myself included, can offer in terms of creating opportunities for remote organizing. We need everyone in this moment to be an organizer. And so that means that I would anticipate opportunities to do things like remote phone canvassing, to reach out to folks, to bring people in, to think about people in your own network and the folks that came to mind that prompted that question, and take it upon yourself to let them know what you heard today and provide them the information that they need to take action with you. And so again, this is an initial first step that everyone can take together, but is the first of many. And so I'm very encouraged by the number of folks who are on and know that we can do a lot from our own homes.
Great. We have, there were a number of questions, and I'm not sure if we answered them entirely, but from Janice Hollins. I'm unmuting you, Janice, if you want to chime in and ask your questions.
Okay, I believe everyone can hear me. But actually at this point, I think I'm just gonna listen to the conversation here and understanding that we're seemingly, just taking baby steps, and my question might be more suitable at a later time. But thank you.
Great, thanks, Janice. I'm gonna go to Tyson, who had a question about the priorities in terms of the list of demands. Tyson, you're unmuted. Go for it. Tyson, are you there? Okay, we are going to move to Megan Reha, who has a question about what the demands and what authority has the power to give us what we want. Hold on one second, Megan. Megan, you're unmuted.
My question was that it wasn't clear to me, just based on the part of the conversation that I heard, whether we had checked that the things we were asking for fell within the authority of the local government specifically, which to me I understood to mean City of Bloomington, Town of Normal, McLean County, and the townships. But I then, while we were listening, looked at the Google Doc, and it does look like there is specifically like this demand is relevant to the sheriff, this demand is relevant to the cities and towns. So I think that I have both asked and answered my questions, but is there anything else that the panel wants to say about like if we're focusing on that? It seems like maybe some money is gonna come through the state. Is there coordinating between other communities around that yet, or is it too early?
This is Don Carlson. I would only add to that even though trying to wade through this maze of responsibility is hard, I think some of the other panelists have already suggested that this should be something that, we have two different city attorneys, we have a county attorney, we have tons of staff, and we're organizers and not lawyers, for example, and so we challenge them to spend an afternoon and figure out those lines of responsibilities. I think in places where it may be problematic, municipalities have broad powers of influence, and if it's like encouraging the court system to do something differently, although we think that municipalities may have those powers regardless, that could be a powerful message that could be sent to the court system. I understand that they're already not going to take non-criminal cases until the middle of April. Well, we're probably going to be in this after that. And so, to be able to communicate with the district court system would be an important step.
Thank you, Don. And then we'll take one more question from Nick Furman, who is asking, well, I'll just let you do your question, Nick. I'm going to unmute you right now.
Hey, yeah, I was wondering about for possible rent forgiveness or a complete moratorium on rent for public housing residents. I mean, I think, rent relief for everybody, is important. And, that would involve probably private landlords making that decision. But it seems like the city could make an immediate decision not to charge rent and to forgive all rent for public housing residents right now.
Nick, I'll jump in on this one. And again, this is a place where most of us are not lawyers, and we'll leave that to the city's lawyers. Whatever action necessary should be taken. That said, there has been news from the federal HUD system tonight about some relief for public housing, and hopefully that will take effect. In the meanwhile, we should be looking at anything that we can do locally through the city of Bloomington, the county, and through the Bloomington Housing Authority to give relief under the assumption that won't happen federally.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have a couple more minutes to get some more of these questions, but we're going to move on and talk to Tori and Kelby from the COVID-19 mutual aid team to tell us about their project and how we can use and take advantage of it and how we can support it.
Hey, hi everybody. My name is Tori Moray with the McLean County COVID-19 mutual aid team. So there are actions that individuals can and must take to slow down the spread of this virus. One of the actions is enabling those groups that should be staying at home where they're safe to do just that. So we have a group of volunteers ready and willing to run small errands for anyone in the McLean County community for whom this virus is especially dangerous. So help us flatten the curve and slow the spread to keep it at a pace that our healthcare facilities can manage. Please share this number. It's 309-839-9496, far and wide. So we're working on setting up a phone number for non-English speakers. If you speak a language other than English and would like to be involved, please let us know. How it'll work is you call the number, you'll listen to a message that explains how everything works, and then you'll leave a detailed voicemail. Someone from our team will return your call to confirm your order and ask some questions to make sure that we know everything we need to know to go purchase for you, and then arrange the delivery. Deliveries will be left on the doorstep, so there'll be no physical interaction between the volunteers, the errand runners, and the people who need errands run.
Any questions on this particular topic to the mutual aid team? Drop them in the chat and I'll read them out loud.
How can others join this team?
Yeah.
So we have a form we can share out for volunteers. And yeah, so you've just fill out the form. It has a lot of information about however the different roles that you can play. So we can share that out.
Got a couple of folks asking about this. So Tori, can you drop that form in the chat when you have a chance?
Sure.
Great. If you can read the phone number one more time for the folks on the phone.
Of course. 309-839-9496.
Somebody's asking. Oh, go ahead, Tori.
Do people need to meet all of the criteria? No. If you are over 60 and you don't have any local support to go run an errand for you, like, call. If you have an underlying health condition and you don't have anyone you can call to run an errand for you, call. If you are sick, call. We're gonna do our best to help whoever calls and whatever they need. Just to confirm, yeah. So it depends on what kind of phone calls we get. We haven't started yet, but we're gonna try our best to find people to meet the needs that people have. So for all of McLean County. So yeah, we do have volunteers who are willing to go anywhere in McLean County. How many people are on this team currently? I think we probably have about 15 volunteers, 15 people willing to run errands. Yay, I'm so glad people want to help. So yeah, well, let me find the form and I'll send it in the chat.
And then we've got some folks asking about if they don't meet all the criteria, should they still try to call and see if they can get help?
I want to say yes. I just don't want to make any promises we can't keep. So we're going to just try and match people's needs to whatever we can do. So if we can't help you, we'll direct you to PATH, or we'll direct you to other social services in the area. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good. We just kind of wanted to find people who didn't have local family, who don't have local support, who like really just need to stay at home so that they don't catch this virus. So.
Thank you, Tori. We're going to turn things back over to Don to close us out.
Yeah, Tori and Kelby are doing such important work, and it's great to see everybody chime in on that. You know, in thinking about the meeting that we just had, we know that everything that we want now will seem like an overreach. And we know that after the virus comes, nothing that we do will seem adequate. And history teaches us that some communities fare better than others in times of pandemics. And that's not by accident. It's the result of robust planning and action at the level. We want every local official, whether they're a city council person, a member of the county board, member of law enforcement, to be a hero in this crisis we're facing. But make no mistake about it, we also need these people who are in positions of power to start planning now and to take action now. For those of us who are on the call, as well as the others, you know, now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. If there ever was a time for our elected officials who need to hear from you, that time is now. And you've heard calls to action this evening for signing petitions, making phone calls, doing emails to city and county officials, or coming to additional virtual meetings. Well, please don't wait for somebody else to fight for your family or to fight for a person in need that you don't know. Our next meeting online will be next Wednesday, March 25th at 7 p.m., a week from tonight. So please join us in this next call. where we're going to debrief what happened during the next following week. Invite a friend. Let's grow our numbers, because organizing is about numbers and about building power. And together, we can have influence in making sure that Bloomington and Normal and McLean County come through this in the best possible shape. If you live in another community that is not one that I've listed, please feel free to use whatever information or tonight that makes sense to you, or reach out where it might be possible to be able to do some organizing in your own community. So thank you for joining us tonight. And Father Doug, could you send us out with a blessing of hope?
Before I hand it over to Father Doug, I just want to name that there are folks who are still asking questions in the chat. The best way to get your questions answered is to go to that Google form and fill it out so that we have your contact information. That will also have space for you to add your questions or reactions or ways that you want to plug into this work. And we will work to plug you in as soon as this call is over. So thank you so much for all of your questions. Sorry we didn't have a chance to get to all of them. And now here's Father Doug.
Good and gracious God, you embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Help us to remember especially the poor and forgotten of our planet and of our community. Bring healing to their lives and to the lives of all of us. Grant us release and relief from the ravages of this COVID-19 virus. Help us to remember the worth of each person and each thing. Help us to remember our solidarity in caring for one another and for this planet, and our need to work together for the well-being of all, especially those who are most vulnerable. We make this prayer to you with trust. You are the mystery of our lives, one God living and reigning forever. Amen.
Amen.